After Brian proposed to Jill, his father pulled him aside for some advice. "Son," he said, "when I married your mother, the first thing I did when we got home was hand her my pants and said, 'Try these on.' She put them on and said, 'They're way too big.' And I told her, 'That's right. I'll wear the pants in this family, and I always will.' And from that day on, we never had a single issue." Brian thought it was brilliant. So on his wedding night, he gave Jill his pants and said, "Try these on." She slipped them on and said, "They're way too big." Brian grinned. "Exactly. I wear the pants around here." Jill didn't skip a beat. She handed him her pants and said, "Now you try mine on." He struggled and said, "I can't even get into these." Jill smiled sweetly and said, "Exactly, and unless your attitude changes, you never will." A married man was secretly seeing his secretary. One afternoon, their plans took them to her place, and after a long conversation and a nap, he woke up in a panic around 8 p.m. Rushing to get dressed, he turned to her and said, "Quick, take my shoes outside and rub them in the grass and dirt." She blinked. "What?" "Just trust me." She did as he asked. He slipped on his muddy shoes and rushed home. The moment he walked through the door, his wife glared at him. "Where have you been?" He sighed. "Honey, I can't lie. I was with my secretary. We fell asleep. I didn't leave until just now." She looked down at his shoes, smirked, and said, "Don't give me that. You've been out playing golf." A few days after Christmas, a mother was working in the kitchen listening to her young son playing with his new electric train in the living room. She heard the train stop, and her son said, "All of you SOBs who want off, get the hell off now, because this is the last stop. And all of you SOBs who are getting on, get your backsides on the train, because we're going down the tracks." The mother went nuts and told her son, "We don't use that kind of language in this house. Now I want you to go to your room, and you are to stay there for 2 hours. When you come out, you may play with your train, but I want you to use nice language." 2 hours later, the son comes out of the bedroom and resumes playing with his train. Soon the train stopped, and the mother heard her son say, "All passengers who are disembarking from the train, please remember to take all of your belongings with you. We thank you for riding with us today and hope your trip was a pleasant one. We hope you will ride with us again soon." She hears the little boy continue, "For those of you just boarding, we ask you to stow all of your hand luggage under your seat. Remember, there is no smoking on the train. We hope you will have a pleasant and relaxing journey with us today." As the mother began to smile, the child added, "For those of you who are cheesed off about the 2-hour delay, please see the bitch in the kitchen." A local bar was so sure that its barman was the strongest man in the village that they offered a standing 1,000 pounds bet. The barman would squeeze a lemon until all the juice ran out and challenge any man to squeeze out another drop. Weightlifters and arm wrestlers, they all tried and lost the bet. Then one day, a scrawny wee man, if he stood sideways you would not see him, wearing scratched glasses and a 10-year-old polyester suit, walked in and said, "I'd like to take on the bet." After the laughter had died down, the barman said, "Okay," grabbed the lemon, and squeezed away. Then he handed the wrinkled remains of the lemon rind to the little man. But the crowd's laughter turned to total silence as the wee man clenched his little fist around the lemon and squeezed it, and a drop fell into the glass. Then he squeezed some more, and another drop fell from the lemon. Without a word, the wee man squeezed some more, and a third drop fell into the glass. The crowd in the bar were astonished and speechless as the barman paid the 1,000 pounds bet. He asked, "What do you do for a living? Are you a lumberjack, a metal worker, a weightlifter, or what?" The little man quietly replied, "I'm a tax collector." An elderly Florida lady did her shopping and, upon returning to her car, found 4 males in the act of leaving with her vehicle. She dropped her shopping bags and drew her handgun, proceeding to scream at the top of her lungs, "I have a gun and I know how to use it. Get out of the car!" The 4 men didn't wait for a second threat. They got out and ran like mad. The lady, somewhat shaken, then proceeded to load her shopping bags into the back of the car and got into the driver's seat. She was so shaken that she could not get her key into the ignition. She tried, and then she realized why. It was for the same reason she had wondered why there was a football, a frisbee, and 2 12-packs of beer in the front seat. A few minutes later, she found her own car parked 4 or 5 spaces farther down. She loaded her bags into the car and drove to the police station to report her mistake. The sergeant to whom she told the story couldn't stop laughing. He pointed to the other end of the counter, where 4 pale men were reporting a carjacking by a mad elderly woman described as white, less than 5 feet tall, wearing glasses with curly white hair and carrying a large handgun. No charges were filed. The morale of the story: if you're going to have a senior moment, make it memorable. A lady goes to the bar on a cruise ship and orders a scotch with 2 drops of water. As the bartender gives her the drink, she says, "I'm on this cruise to celebrate my 80th birthday, and it's today." The bartender says, "Well, since it's your birthday, I'll buy you a drink. In fact, this one is on me." As the woman finishes her drink, the woman to her right says, "I would like to buy you a drink, too." The old woman says, "Thank you. Bartender, I want a scotch with 2 drops of water." "Coming up," says the bartender. As she finishes that drink, the man to her left says, "I would like to buy you one, too." The old woman says, "Thank you. Bartender, I want another scotch with 2 drops of water." "Coming right up," the bartender says. As he gives her the drink, he says, "Ma'am, I'm dying of curiosity. Why the scotch with only 2 drops of water?" The old woman replies, "Sonny, when you're my age, you'll have learned how to hold your liquor. Holding your water, however, is a whole other issue." Sally, a blonde, goes on her first camping trip. Her husband, who was a scout leader, was sick, so she volunteered to take over for him for the weekend. She got everyone together and assigned different duties to each scout. Gabby was responsible for the food supplies, Mike would be the cook this trip, Johnny was responsible for their maps and making up a time schedule, Tim was to decide on their events and fit them into Johnny's schedule, and Sally would test all their equipment before setting out. They arrived at Big Moose Mountain and everyone was excited. They arrived right on schedule and were getting ready for their first event, hiking up the mountain. But first, they wanted to get something to eat. So Sally asked Mike if he would prepare the meal, and of course Mike said he would. About 10 minutes later, he came back and told Sally, "I can't make the supper. I can't light a fire with the matches you brought." Sally replied, "I can't understand that. Those matches should be perfectly fine. I tested them all just before we left." "Son, Daddy, I fell in love and want to date this awesome girl. Father, that's great, son. Who is she?" "Son, it's Sandra, the neighbor's daughter." "Father, oh, wow, I wish you hadn't said that. I have to tell you something, son, but you must promise not to tell your mother. Sandra is actually your sister." The boy is naturally bummed out, but a couple of months later, "Son, Daddy, I fell in love again and she is even hotter." "Father, that's great, son. Who is she?" "Son, it's Angela, the other neighbor's daughter." "Father, oh, I wish you hadn't said that. Angela is also your sister." This went on a few more times, and finally the son was so mad, he went straight to his mother crying. "Son, Mom, I am so mad at Dad. I fell in love with 6 girls, and I can't date any of them because Dad is their father." The mother hugs him affectionately and says, "You can date whoever you want. He isn't your father." A judge was interviewing a woman regarding her pending divorce and asked, "What are the grounds for your divorce?" She replied, "About 4 acres and a nice little home in the middle of the property with a stream running by." "No," he said, "I mean, what is the foundation of this case?" "It is made of concrete, brick and mortar, Your Honor," she responded. "I mean," he continued, "what are your relations like?" "I have an aunt and uncle living here in town, and so do my husband's parents." He said, "Do you have a real grudge?" "No," she replied. "We have a 2-car carport and have never really needed one." "Please," he tried again. "Is there any infidelity in your marriage?" "Yes, both my son and daughter have stereo sets. We don't necessarily like the music, but the answer to your questions is yes." "Ma'am, does your husband ever beat you up?" "Yes," she responded. "About twice a week he gets up earlier than I do." Finally, in frustration, the judge asked, "Lady, why do you want a divorce?" "Oh, I don't want a divorce," she replied. "I've never wanted a divorce. My husband does. He says he just can't communicate with me." A man is in court. The judge says, On the 3rd of August, you are accused of killing your wife by beating her to death with a hammer. How do you plead? Guilty, said the man in the dock. At this point, a man at the back of the court stood up and shouted, "You dirty rat!" The judge asked the man to sit down and to refrain from making any noise. The judge continued, "And also, on the 17th of September, you are accused of killing your son by beating him to death with a hammer. How do you plead?" "Guilty," said the man in the dock. Again, the same man at the back stood up and shouted even louder, "You dirty, rotten, stinking rat!" At this point, the judge called the man to the bench and said, "I have already asked you to be quiet. If you continue with these outbursts, I will have to charge you with contempt of court. I can understand your feelings, but what relationship have you to this man?" He replied, "He is my next-door neighbor." The judge replied, "I can understand your feelings then, but you must refrain from any comments." The man replied, "No, Your Honor, you don't understand. Twice I have asked if I could borrow a hammer, and both times he said he didn't have one." A sign on a restaurant window says, "If you order it and we don't have it, you instantly win $1 million. A man walking by notices the sign and walks in the restaurant and sits down at the table with a smirk on his face. The waiter asks what he will be having, and the man says, "I will have white rhinoceros stew, please." The waiter comes out with a boiling hot bowl of exactly what the man ordered. The man is taken by surprise, but he eats the stew and pays for his very expensive meal. He leaves angrily. The next day, he comes back and sits at the table with a smirk on his face again. He tells the waiter, "Today I will have bullet ants stuffed with dolphin meat." The waiter leaves and quickly comes back after a few minutes with exactly what the man ordered. The man, surprised again, eats his meal angrily, pays, and leaves. The next day he comes back and sits at the table and tells the waiter, "Today I will have a lactating mermaid breast sandwich." A few minutes go by and the waiter comes out holding 2 massive duffel bags with the $1 million. The man, overcome with excitement, says, "I knew it! You don't have mermaid breasts." The waiter tells him politely, "We actually have it, sir. It's just that we ran out of bread." A man comes up to the drive-thru window and the attendant greets him. Attendant, "Welcome. How may I help you today?" Customer, "I'd like a burger and a vanilla ice cream cone." Attendant, "Sorry, the ice cream machine is broken again today and we don't know how long it'll be down, so we don't have any ice cream today." Customer, "How about fries and ice cream?" Attendant, "Sorry, we don't have any ice cream today." Customer, "Okay, how about a chocolate ice cream cone?" Attendant, "Can you spell fries?" Customer, "Fries." Attendant, "Okay, now how about you spell ice cream?" Customer, "Icecream." Attendant, "Now what do you get when you take the F out of ice cream?" Customer, "There's no F in ice cream." Attendant, "That's what I've been trying to tell you. There's no effing ice cream, so how about something else?" Customer, "Burger and fries." Attendant, "Okay." 2 guys left the bar after a long night of drinking, jumped in the car and started it up. After a couple of minutes, an old man appeared in the passenger window and tapped lightly. The passenger screamed, "Look at the window, there's an old ghost's face there." The driver sped up, but the old man's face stayed in the window. The passenger rolled his window down part way and, scared out of his wits, said, "What do you want?" The old man softly replied, "You got any tobacco?" The passenger handed the old man a cigarette and yelled, "Step on it!" to the driver, rolling up the window in terror. A few minutes later, they calmed down and started laughing again. The driver said, "I don't know what happened, but don't worry, we're doing 80 now." All of a sudden, there was a light tapping on the window, and the old man reappeared. "There he is again," the passenger yelled. He rolled down the window and shakily said, "Yes? Do you have a light?" The old man quietly asked. The passenger threw a lighter out the window, saying, "Step on it!" They were flooring it and going about 100 miles an hour, trying to forget what they had just seen and heard, when all of a sudden there came some more tapping. "Oh my God, he's back!" The passenger rolled down the window and screamed in stark terror. "What now?" The old man gently replied, "You want some help getting out of the mud?" This guy shows up at a farm and says he knows how to make animals speak. The farmer says, "That's ridiculous." So the guy walks up to the farmer's cow and says, "Moo, moo, moo." The cow replies in English, "Oh, thank you for asking. He generally treats me very well. He milks me promptly at 5:30 a.m. every morning. If I had one suggestion, I wish he'd change the water in my trough a little more often." The farmer is amazed. He's never seen an animal talk before. Next, the guy walks up to the farmer's dog. "Woof, woof, woof," he says. The dog replies, "Haha, yes, I'm not a fan of that kibble he feeds me, but I do enjoy life on this farm quite a bit. I do my best to contribute, and I appreciate that he lets me live in the house instead of the barn." The farmer says, "Incredible." Next, the guy tried to walk up to the farmer's sheep, but the farmer jumps right in front of the guy. "Don't talk to the sheep, she's a liar." A 95-year-old man married a 23-year-old girl, prompting fears for his health from the wedding guests. They were afraid that the wedding night might prove fatal because he was a frail old man and she was a vivacious young woman. But the next morning, everyone was surprised to see the bride come down the main stairwell of the hotel very slowly, step by step, and painfully bow-legged. Eventually, she managed to hobble to the front desk. The clerk looked very concerned and asked the bride, "What happened to you? You look as if you've gone 10 rounds with Evander Holyfield." "It's my husband," she gasped. Oh my God. When he told me that he'd been saving up for 75 years, I thought he meant his money. A Scotsman, an Australian, and a Welshman are hanging out together on a farm. The Scot notices a sheep that has become stuck in a fence trying to squeeze in between the rails. "I'll just be a minute, lads," says the Scot as he runs over and humps the helpless sheep. After a good tussle, he rejoins his comrades as the Aussie pipes up. "Well, I don't see why not." He then runs over and humps the sheep. The Welshman waits for the Aussie to pull up his trousers and saunters over to the poor, ravaged sheep. He grabs her by the hind legs and pulls her out of the fence. "What are you doing? Don't you want to have a go?" asks the Scot. "I need to turn her over first," replies the Welshman. "But why?" asks the Aussie. Exasperated by the ignorance of his companions, the Welshman looks back and replies, "How else do you expect me to kiss her?" A traveling salesman stops by a farm in southern Ontario, where the farmer has the requisite 3 beautiful daughters. As he walks up to the farmhouse, he looks over the fence into the pigsty, and he notices that one of the pigs has a wooden back leg and is hobbling around. When he gets to the farmhouse, he asks the farmer about the pig. "That is the darndest thing I've ever seen. I have never seen a pig with a wooden leg." "What happened to your pig?" he asks the farmer. "Well," says the farmer, "let me just tell you about that pig. About 4 months ago, we had a chimney fire in the night, and that pig broke into the farmhouse squealing and woke us all up in time to get the fire put out before any serious damage was done. He saved our lives." "That is amazing. But about that wooden leg?" "And that's not all. About 2 months ago, while we were at church, the farmhand had an accident with the PTO on the tractor down in the back 40, and that pig dialed 911 and led the paramedics to him when the ambulance arrived. Our man could have lost his arm if it weren't for that pig." "Wow, that is a truly wonderful pig, but about that wooden leg?" "Well," says the farmer, "a pig like that you don't eat all at once." One winter morning during breakfast, a husband and wife in northern Minnesota were listening to the radio. They heard the announcer say, "We are going to have 8 to 10 inches of snow today. You must park your car on the even-numbered side of the street so the snowplows can get through." So the good wife went out and moved her car. A week later, while they are eating breakfast again, the radio announcer says, "We are expecting 10 to 12 inches of snow today. You must park your car on the odd-numbered side of the street so the snowplows can get through." The good wife went out and moved her car again. The next week they were again having breakfast when the radio announcer said, "We are expecting 12 to 14 inches of snow today. You must park." Then the electric power went out. The good wife was very upset, and with a worried look on her face, she said, "Honey, I don't know what to do. Which side of the street do I need to park on so the snowplows can get through?" With the love and understanding in his voice that all men who are married to blondes exhibit, the husband replied, "Why don't you just leave it in the garage this time?" A man absolutely hated his wife's cat and decided to get rid of him one day by driving him 20 blocks from his home and leaving him at the park. As he was getting home, the cat was walking up the driveway. The next day, he decided to drive the cat 40 blocks away. He put the beast out and headed home. When he reached his driveway, there was the cat. He kept taking the cat further and further, but the cat would always beat him home. One day, he decided to drive hundreds of miles away. He drove out of town, through the desert, and into the next state until he reached what he thought was a safe distance from his home. He let the cat out and headed back. Hours later, the man calls home to his wife. "Jen, is the cat there?" "Yes," the wife answers. "Why do you ask?" "Put him on the phone," the man replies. "I'm lost and need directions." A blonde walks into a bank in New York City and asks for the loan officer. She says she's going to Europe on business for 2 weeks and needs to borrow $5,000. The bank officer says the bank will need some kind of security for the loan, so the blonde hands over the keys to a new Rolls-Royce. The car is parked on the street in front of the bank. She has the title and everything checks out. The bank agrees to accept the car as collateral for the loan. The bank's president and its officers all enjoy a good laugh at the blonde for using a $250,000 Rolls as collateral against a $5,000 loan. An employee of the bank then drives the Rolls into the bank's underground garage and parks it there. 2 weeks later, the blonde returns and repays the $5,000 and the interest, which comes to $15.41. The loan officer says, "Miss, we are very happy to have had your business, and this transaction has worked out very nicely, but we are a little puzzled. We checked you out and found that you are a multimillionaire. What puzzles us is, why would you bother to borrow $5,000? The blonde replies, "Where else in New York City can I park my car for 2 weeks for only $15.41 and expect it to be there when I return?" A blonde girl is on a plane to Dallas. She is sitting in first class when she has a ticket for coach. While she is reading a magazine, the flight attendant confronts her and says, "Excuse me, ma'am, you have a coach ticket and you are sitting in first class. Could you please move to coach?" She puts down her magazine, looks at her in the eyes, and says, "I'm blonde, I'm beautiful, I'm sitting in first class, and I'm going to Dallas." She continues reading her magazine. The flight attendant calls the co-pilot to talk to her. The co-pilot confronts her and says, "I'm the co-pilot of this plane, and I'm happy to hear you're excited to be going to Dallas, but could you please move to coach? You don't have a first-class seat." She puts down her magazine, looks at him in the eyes, and says, "I'm blonde, I'm beautiful, I'm sitting in first class, and I'm going to Dallas." She continues reading her magazine. The co-pilot, furious and not knowing what to do, goes to the captain and asks if he can talk to her. The captain gets up and talks to the woman. The woman grabs her bags and moves to coach. He returns to the co-pilot. The co-pilot asks, "How did you get her to move? We've tried talking to her, but nothing happened. What did you say?" And the captain responded saying, "I told her first class isn't going to Dallas." "This is your captain speaking. I'm afraid we have lost one of our engines, so we'll be about 10 minutes late arriving at our destination," announces the captain. "Oh no," says a passenger. Then suddenly another engine fails. "This is your captain speaking. I'm afraid we have lost another one of our engines, so we'll be about 30 minutes late arriving at our destination," announces the captain. "Another one," the passenger says again. Suddenly the captain says, "This is your captain speaking. I'm really sorry to say, but we've lost a third engine, so we'll be a bit more than an hour late to our destination. I hope that fourth engine doesn't fail, or we'll be up here for the rest of our lives," says the passenger. A policeman, an archer, and a soldier are on an airplane losing altitude. The pilot yells to these passengers, "We're carrying too much weight. Drop whatever you got." The policeman drops his pistol, the archer drops his bow and arrow, and the soldier drops a grenade out of the hatch door. The plane still crashes, and all 3 passengers wake up in different locations. In search for help, they each start making their way through the woods they are now lost in. The policeman stumbles upon a little girl crying over the body of an adult man. He asks the girl, "What happened here?" To which the little girl replies, I was walking with my daddy, and a gun fell out of the sky and hit his head. The archer comes across someone crying over a body as well, a young boy. The archer says, "Oh my gosh, what happened?" The boy tells the archer, "We were playing hide and seek, and I found him with an arrow in his head." The soldier pushes through the brush and finds a young boy laughing hysterically, standing in front of a cabin with a giant hole in the wall. The soldier asks the little boy, "Whoa, what did I miss?" The little boy says between laughing fits, "You wouldn't believe the fart I just ripped." A blind pilot walks into a plane waving his walking stick. The passengers all look at each other in disbelief. The flight attendant gets on the PA and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the captain is legally blind, but rest assured he is one of the best pilots in the world with over 6,000 successful flights." Next, the co-pilot makes his way to the plane, and he is also blind and uses his walking stick to make it to the cabin. The flight attendant gets on the PA and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the co-pilot is also blind, but rest assured he is the second best pilot in the world with over 5,000 successful flights." At this point, the plane begins to take off from the runway. As it gains speed, the passengers grow tenser. The plane keeps accelerating more and more, and as it approaches the end of the runway, it still hasn't left the ground. The plane is approaching the end of the runway at high speed, and the passengers scream, "Oh my God, we're all going to die!" Suddenly, the plane takes off and begins its ascent. The pilot turns to the co-pilot and says, "The day they stop screaming, we're screwed." In a neighborhood, there were two little brothers, Jim and Jake. Jim was 12 and Jake was 9, and they were two little devils. They ran around stealing stuff from the neighbors, and whenever something went missing on the neighborhood, everyone knew it was their fault. One day, after they stole something yet again, their mother said, "I'm done with you two," and decided to call the local priest for help. He suggested that she should send Jake to the church, and there he would turn into a more behaved child. As soon as Jake got to the church and closed the gates, the priest asked him, "My child, where is Jesus Christ?" Jake became petrified in place, scared of the priest. "Where is Jesus Christ?" the priest asked again, raising his voice. Jake then ran outside and back inside his house and hid under his bed. When Jim got back home and found him hiding, he asked him, "What happened? You look terrified." Jake then replied, "Bro, we're screwed. Jesus Christ is missing, and they think it's our fault." Mr. Ponsonby Smythe received an urgent phone call from his wife. "George, there's a gorilla in the apple tree in the front garden," she cried, panic in her voice. "A gorilla?" George repeated skeptically. "Are you sure? Have you been drinking again?" "No, George," she said. "It's real. It must have escaped from the zoo or a circus. It's sitting in the tree, growling at everyone, and just threw an apple at Mrs. Bell from number 23. "Did it hit her?" George asked, then added, "No, never mind. I'll be right home." George arrived to find, sure enough, a massive gorilla in the apple tree. As soon as the gorilla saw him, it growled and threw an apple at him, narrowly missing. He rushed inside where his wife was nervously peering through the curtains. "George, what do we do?" she asked, frantic. "Don't worry, Miriam," he said, picking up the yellow pages. "I'll find a professional." After a quick search, George found only one listing under gorilla catchers. He dialed the number, and after a few rings, a voice answered. "Bloggs and Wilson, gorilla catchers. Bloggs speaking." "Good afternoon," said George. "There's a gorilla in my apple tree. Can you come and catch it?" "I'm sorry, sir," Bloggs replied, "but Wilson is off sick today. We're short-handed." "But it's urgent," George protested. "The gorilla's in the tree, causing a scene. I'm sure it's lowering property values. Surely there's something you can do." "Well," said Bloggs, "catching a gorilla is a two-man job, but if you're willing to fill in for Wilson, we can manage." "I'll do anything," George said, desperate. "Just tell me what to do." 20 minutes later, a battered transit van with the sign Bloggs and Wilson Gorilla Catchers pulled up. Bloggs got out, unloaded a large rifle, a set of manacles, and a snarling Rottweiler. He rang the doorbell and greeted George. "I see the gorillas still up there," Bloggs said. "We'd better get started." "All right," George said. What do I do? Simple, Bloggs replied. You stand here with the manacles. I'll climb the tree, wrestle the gorilla down, and push him out. The moment he hits the ground, the dog will leap at his, sensitive parts, distracting him long enough for you to put the manacles on. Then we'll load him into the van. George nodded. Got it, but what's the rifle for? Bloggs leaned in, serious. If by any chance the gorilla knocks me out of the tree, you have to shoot the dog.